Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm, of course, your host with the most, Phil Better, and today we have a guest who is truly the master of crafting and navigating dream careers. They are a dynamic force in the world of career development and creative freelancing. From her early days as a professional dancer and choreographer to a role as an adjunct dance professor, our guest has dedicated her life to helping others build sustainable and fulfilling careers. She's the founder and CEO of Career Steward, where she leverages her expertise as a certified business coach and career strategist to guide professionals towards fulfilling their ideal path. Their impressive journey includes authoring the Freelance Dancer's Roadmap and contributing to over 100 insightful articles on career and business topics to top national publications. Whether you're a creative freelancer, transitioning careers, re-entering the workforce, or pursuing a side hustle, our guest has the tools and wisdom to help you live your purpose and love your work, which we all want. In this episode, our guest will share her remarkable experiences, offer actionable advice on building a career that aligns with your passions, and discusses how you can turn your dream into reality. I'm excited for this. So get ready to gain invaluable insight from a true expert in career stewardship. Please welcome our guest, Shaté Hayes. Shaté, thank you so much for being here. Did I mess up the name again?
No, that was perfect. And what a lovely intro. I loved all that sauce you put on it, Phil. Like, that was hot. I like that.
You're very welcome. I look to be the MC, the hype man of this podcast, because I'm not the star. You're the star. Just hype you up to get everybody ready for an amazing interview. So I thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited about today's conversation.
All right. So we're going to start off right off the bat, Shaté.
Okay.
Why? Why did you become an entrepreneur? What was it that made you decide to go from, not the corporate world, but into the world of like freelancing and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, I always knew I wanted to come back to independent work. So in my professional dance career, I was a commercial dancer. So you are essentially, your own business. You're a freelance business and you're working from gig to gig and you are, building the career on your own terms. And while it's quite fulfilling and I really, really loved it, like it's a constant hustle. It's a constant grind. And one of the reasons that I transitioned into corporate, like I had sort of evolved in my personal career. I wanted a different lifestyle, didn't really want to be like on for 12, 15 hours a day. So I wanted to do something different and quite honestly, maybe a little bit more stable. And I did that and then was kind of like, okay, now I'm ready for the creativity, the freedom again, the autonomy in a different way. And I wanted to be able to help people with their career sort of stuck places in the way that I wanted to help them, not in the way that is traditionally most important in corporate spaces, to be honest.
I like that.
Yeah.
And so you transitioned from, being your own boss in the dancing world, going to corporate, and now you're creating your own stewardship for people's careers.
Yeah.
What was that transition like, going from, being a freelancer, pretty much a corporate dancer, to going into the corporate world to where you are today? Like those transitions, they're kind of hard. How did you deal with them?
Yeah, that's a really great question. It was interesting because in my first career, I will say this, I've been fortunate enough to do all of the work that I've ever done. I have been passionate about. I have loved the work that I've done and I was intentional. Like I chose it. And in my dance career, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I never really expected to want to transition. It caught me off guard that I was ready to evolve into something more. And when I finally took the plunge, I felt like I went from 0 to 100, like overnight. I kind of had been feeling nudgings and signs. And like one day, as I'm traveling from adjudicating a dance concert and teaching classes, because that was my life. It was, I got a master's in dance. I'm an adjunct professor. I'm teaching at 5 or 6 college campuses during the day. I'm in rehearsals for a theater where I'm choreographing a show from like 6 to 11 at night. On weekends, I'm doing things. So I came back and this particular semester, I had not been that excited. And, I was just kind of like going through the motions where typically I'm like so ready for the semester to start. And then one day as I'm traveling back to where I was living at the time, I was kind of like, yeah, I think I'm done with this. I'm ready for something new. I'm ready for something more. Didn't know what that more was. A couple weeks later, I go into the department chair's office and was like, hey, this is my last semester and I'm going to figure it out. Right. Just kind of took this blind leap of faith. And I don't necessarily always recommend that. Fortunately for me, I have a super strong support system. So I had a family that was able to take me back in and figure it out, help me figure it out. But the challenge there was like, I had an identity crisis that I did not anticipate. It was kind of like, oh, I'm not a professional dancer. Like, who am I? What am I supposed to be doing in the world? Like what, I just wasn't expecting that. And that was so tough, to the point where I was like, if I'm going to do something else for a living, I don't even want to leave the house. Like, how do I leave the house if I'm not a dancer? Like, that's so weird. But by the time I finally got to the place where I knew what I was looking for, so I'll just say that whenever there's not alignment, and I hope that can be a takeaway, when you don't have alignment in something, you're going to stay stuck. Like you're not going to move forward in the path if there isn't an alignment between who you are and what the target is. And I finally found that, and it was in the career space, which I had been doing all along. I don't know why it wasn't obvious to me, but it just wasn't. And I made the choice to go into the corporate space and say, be my authentic self. So I led with, I was a professional dancer. This is how I helped my students. This is what I did in the world. While everyone else came from like HR backgrounds, recruiting, corporate spaces, I was like, yeah, this is who I am. And this is, yeah, I'm here and I'm gonna do it. So that was the one transition. The transition from corporate back into my own wasn't as difficult, because throughout this whole time I have been investing in coaches and programs and like learning the things that I didn't have when I was freelancing initially, learning about the corporate space and how to lead teams and, put out big projects and things like that. So I feel like it was the right time. I was taking all of the things that I had learned, all the things I experienced, to put out into the world the thing that I was ready to put out.
I love it. And what made you decide or focus on helping others in their career transition? Because that's a huge burden, if you will, to take on, because you
Yeah.
have these people who are trusting you with the next step of their livelihood, the next iteration of who they are. And as entrepreneurs, we know we go through iterations like we're turning a page in a book.
Yeah.
How did you what made you decide, like, yeah, I'm going to take this on? Because you were dancing before, which, yeah, that you're helping people become versed in something that you have a degree in, you understand this whole space. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to help people in the corporate world. But then you're like, in the corporate world, it's kind of safe, because everybody's going in the same trajectory. Everybody wants to be the CEO of the company, right? Everybody wants that big paycheck. But now you're going outside of the corporate world where everybody was like, well, I want to run my own business, or I want to do this or that. And that's a lot of pressure. How did you figure oh, I can handle this pressure?
Yeah. I love this question, Phil. And for me, it's really, really simple. I remember so many moments in my dance career where I was like, oh, I love this job. I love that I get to do this. There was a moment where I was working overseas in Shanghai. I will never forget this moment. I'm on stage and I had a moment where I connected with, for some reason, there was this one person that kept coming to our shows, and it was an intimate setting. So the venue wasn't that large. And so it was enough that you could even touch the people that you're performing for. And so I've been able to have a couple of conversations and actually connect with her. And after the show one night, she was just saying to me like, oh my gosh, I would love to do something like that. I wish I could, have a career kind of like that. And I remember in this moment, in this tiny venue in Shanghai, saying to this person, oh, but you can. Like, it might look differently here. I don't know what the systems are like, but all you have to do is find the right community, get planted. And I started to talk to her about what is possible. And it was such a moment of I love my job. I think everybody should feel this way. Everyone deserves to feel this way. And so that is one of the reasons that even in my dance career, I started helping dancers learn how to build their own careers, because it's like, yes, if this is what you love, let me help you figure out how to do it. And more importantly than that, when I launched my dance career, I didn't have any information to help me figure it out. It was the internet wasn't really a thing like that for real. And there definitely wasn't tons of articles. There weren't platforms to like where freelancers can thrive. It was just like Craigslist and like one other site. And like Craigslist is not where you build a dance career, by the way. So like as I'm I'm learning the way, I start like blogging and writing and sharing everything that I'm learning for my younger self. And it just so happens that there's a whole world of aspiring dancers who need the same information. And so it's that thing that everyone deserves to feel passionate and lit up about what they're doing. I think there's an article that's like, throughout the course of our lives, we spend 90,000 hours working, right? There's more data out there that says career dissatisfaction negatively impacts your health, negatively impacts your wealth. So if we're spending all this time doing this thing to make a living, like we gotta be lit up in some kind of way. So to me, it doesn't feel like pressure. It just feels like joy.
Ooh, I like that. I like how you're taking it. I would look at it as pressure because I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying to help these people, in the next stage. And you're like, nah, it's joy. I get joy in this. And I'm like, you are a special breed of people, but without you, people won't be finding their love, right? They won't be finding the joy they have in their careers. When you decided to get out of the corporate world, you were already doing the coaching and taking the courses and doing that. Were you worried that you were going to have issues building your career as a career steward? Or were you like, I got this. This is easy peasy, breezy, beautiful cover girl type idea?
A little bit of both, like right in the middle. So I have been behind the scenes of the corporate space, so I know what it looks like to have strategic goals and plans and thinking and strategy and all of that. And I was like, oh yeah, I can do that. I know what it's like to lead teams across the nation and the globe. I'm like, oh yeah, when I have a team, I can do that. And I've done all this coaching and, became a certified business coach so I can learn like the back ends for myself, like what it's like to build at every stage of your business. And so there was a part of me that was like, okay, you got this. You have the tools that you didn't have the first time. But that does not exempt me from having to walk the process myself and trust the process as well. And so, fortunate enough to have, I built The Working Dancer, which is where all of those articles and content that I was talking about before. So I had a healthy enough list before that I kind of kept in touch with. And I reached out to them. I was like, hey, this is what I'm doing now. So there's a captive audience in some regards that's there waiting, to continue connecting with me. But then there's still, I got to learn the market today. Like, what's the demand today? Who are my right people? Am I saying the right things to those people? Like, am I offering the right things? Am I offering in a way that they need it? Am I enjoying it this way? So there's still all of these little things to finesse. It doesn't exempt me from the process. So I'll definitely say just in the middle of what you said, those two things. Definitely. Yeah.
I'm interested because you've gone from, and your roles have spanned very different: professional dancer, career coach, ed tech executive. How do you see the intersect of creativity and career development evolving, especially with freelancers and those in the gig economy?
How do I see the intersection of creativity and career development evolving?
Yeah.
That's a really interesting question. I love this kind of question. I love intersectionality, so I appreciate the question. Actually, in grad school, my graduate thesis research was on the intersection between creativity and divinity. And so that's probably why I speak so passionately about purpose, because I feel like all of us were put here to do something, like we're called here to do something. I personally believe that calling has something to do with being in service to the people around us. And so in terms of creativity and career development, I think that as artists, or the artists that I've been around in these spaces, there's so much conversation about how to develop your art, how to develop your creativity, what the technique of it, how to develop your craft. And so that's really key. But then there's also this whole other career business building side of it that is equally important. And I would say that I was probably one of the early voices speaking about it in a consistent way. Specifically for dancers. And now it's everywhere. And there's so much, I think, out there, which is a great thing, where they're trying to have like business expos and events for creatives, like trying to figure out like how to help them have, I think, a body of work in a sustainable way. I think that there's still more work to be done there. I think that there's definitely way more conversation about the gig economy, which is great because there's so many folks in the gig economy. I think Upwork even posted something not too long ago about the millions of people that are like participating in the gig economy in some type of way. And that doesn't mean that everyone is 100% freelancing. There are still people who have their 9 to 5 and they're doing something on the side. They're on platforms like Fiverr and Upwork and Contently and like all of these things, or they're Etsy is like a huge kind of gig economy place. And so I see that. I guess what I want to say about the intersection there is that there are so many people participating in it. I think that the discourse on it is definitely evolving. I think people are having better tools to sustain a life in that world. And I just think it's a beautiful thing. So I'd like to see where it continues to go for sure.
Where do you hope it goes?
I hope that there's a world where when people are having a conversation about, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? Even though I don't like that question to kids, but when there's a world, so maybe it's not like when you grow up, maybe it's like a teenager or something, and there's a conversation, or a college student, and there's a conversation about what would you like to do, at least for the foreseeable future. I would like for there not to be as much fear and uncertainty around something that is not a traditional 9 to 5. I would like for people like myself, when they say, I want to see what it's like to be a dancer, or I want to see what it's like to be insert whatever creative practice that they choose, that the world, families, the communities know enough about that to support them to say, oh, you can do it. Because I think what we've seen in the past is just like, if you're an artist, you're famous. Like you either make it, like you're either Beyonce or you're poor, right? And so there's like no in between. When the truth of the matter is, while it might be difficult, or maybe while it might be less known, there are so many artists and creatives making a living doing what they love. And we need to see more of those models, and we need to have more conversations about what those models are. And so when I'm working with someone, I really love to figure out how to translate the things that they love into a livelihood that makes sense for where they are and what's important to them. And so, yeah, I just hope that there's a world where it's more understood, it's more acceptable, and it's not like seen as this sort of out there, I don't know how you're going to do that kind of world of work.
I like that. Let's say we have someone who's kind of like on the fence. They're looking to transition. They're not sure what they should start doing or looking at. What would your advice be to them when they're just on that cusp? What should they start to do to prepare for that transition into the new career of what they're passionate about?
Yeah, great question. I am a firm believer in building your career, your business from the inside out. And so when people traditionally or typically start to look for the next thing, they start to look everywhere else but within. They start to look at what jobs are available. They're checking job boards. They're, having conversations. And I believe that people should start inward. So the first place to start is self-reflection. Maybe if you've done strengths assessments before, like pick another one up to see if your strengths have changed. That could be DISC, that could be Strengths Finders. Do reflections on what your values are, like what's important to you. Why do you feel like you're ready to transition from where you are? What is it? Have you outgrown it? Is it toxic? Are you not learning enough? Is there no advancement opportunity? Like what's the thing that you don't want? And then be very, very clear about the thing that you do want. And then also be very, very clear about who you are. And then use that information to start to feel your way into like what the next path for you might be.
What are some of the stumbling blocks that you've faced in your journey?
Mm-hmm.
Because those are the biggest things I think people have. Like they see people like are successful being able to transition from role to role or
Mm-hmm.
career to career like yourself, and they don't realize that there's stumbling blocks. There's those issues that we hit as entrepreneurs or as career
Mm-hmm.
people, and they just think that we get them like easy peasy, like it's simple. Do you have a stumbling block that you hit that was something you thought insurmountable, but you were able to overcome it? And how did you overcome it?
Insurmountable. Woo-hoo-hoo. That's a good question and a tough question.
And a
The
$10 word.
The obstacles, I don't know if they were insurmountable, but they're consistent. I guess that's probably a better word.
Okay.
And I know that people tend to give up when things get hard. And so, actually, one of the things that my dance career afforded me is a resilience that, you know, going to auditions and choking and like failing in front of everybody and being told no a gazillion times repeatedly really does toughen you up. And so, when you're transitioning, and you're having to knock on multiple doors until you find the right one, that can be really discouraging. You're getting rejection after rejection. And so I think the uncertainty of things and rejection sort of keeps people where they are. It's kind of like, well, I know this stuff, so let me not take a chance on something that I don't know. So for me, in terms of like how I got over it, I just know to keep going, right? Like, so when it is tough, and I know that can be easier said than done, but I don't know if it's helpful for someone to maybe think about the no's as a data point, right? So if in a world where people are really talking about like going with the flow, what it means to go with the flow, and flow really means like wherever the energy is directing you, like that's what you're going to pursue. So a closed door is really just a redirection. And so if it's not this role and this role or this role, if it's not this type of business or this type of project, then what is it? So keep reflecting, keep learning about yourself, keep investing in yourself, and then like keep opening, like keep knocking on doors, keep having conversations with people. And then eventually the right door, the best door, hopefully will open. So it feels a little cliche and I wish I had something more to offer, but it's really like all the rejection. And the only way to just overcome rejection is to keep going. Quite honestly, there's no trick around that,
The only trick is you have to keep getting rejected until someone says yes.
Exactly.
You just grow that thick layer of skin to deal with the rejection. You realize it's not you, it's them. They're losing out.
Exactly.
That's what I learned. I'm curious. You mentioned investing in yourself. What have you done apart from hiring those coaches and taking those courses that you've done to invest in your career so far to be the CEO of Career Steward?
Yeah, it's hard to tell the story definitely without the programs that I've been a part of. I also read like incessantly. So I buy books like a lot of women buy shoes. So I'm like constantly buying books. There are books everywhere, and I'm just consuming that information. I also am a avid person. Like I believe in therapy. Like that is a must. Like the self-awareness that I've gotten from therapy is just like huge and priceless. That's been really helpful. And then also like meditation and like spiritual practice. Like so I would say that investing in myself is part of that is self-care and all of those things. So spiritual practice, working out, eating right, meditation, journaling, therapy. And then it's also learning new information and like seeking the wisdom of coaches or people who've done it before. And yeah, just continuous learning is one of the things that are super important to me.
I love that. Continuing education is so much important, especially for us as entrepreneurs, because we don't have courses that teach us this. We have to learn ourselves. We have to create our own course, if you
Yeah.
will. I'm curious. I want to know two books. One
Mhm.
book that had a major impact on your journey
Yeah.
that you kind of go back to on
Mhm.
occasion,
Mhm.
or just one that had a major impact on you. You don't have to come back to it. It was just like, the 4-hour work week for me was monumental, uh,
Mm.
changed my way of thinking. And what book are you reading right now that you feel would be beneficial for the audience to read as well?
Oh, okay. So the first book that came to mind, because there are a couple that I was like, ooh, this one really, like I can think of the specific nuggets in a couple of different books that really stood out to me and I take with me. But the book itself, the overarching story itself that probably had the biggest impact on me is The Alchemist. And just that story of like, wherever you are, whatever step that you're on in your journey to pursuing your dream, like what you need in that moment presents itself. Oh, it just gives me chills. It's like it's the essence of like trusting the process. It's the essence of like saying yes now to the thing in front of you. And yeah, I just feel chills when I think about that. Like how the universe conspires to give you what you want and need. That's some good stuff right there. And then
I can say, like, I just wrote it down because I'm like, this is the third time I've heard about this book. I haven't seen it too. The cover's very interesting with the red and gold and the orange, and I'm like, should I pick it up? Shouldn't I? Now
you
that I,
should.
yeah,
Yes.
Shaté, you just convinced me just from the passion that you've given about it. That's definitely now on my white list of books that I'm going to read.
You have to, because it's a fable, right? So you're reading the story of someone else in pursuit of an actual dream that they had while they were asleep, but it's just so powerful and poetic and symbolic of like the dreams that we're pursuing every single day. So yes. And let's see, I'm looking at a couple of books in front of me. I'm like, should I say one of these? I'll just be honest and say what I'm currently reading, but I don't know if I've gotten far enough into the book to say much about it, but I'm reading The Abundance Code right now. How to Bust the 7 Money Myths for a Rich Life Now. And so, yeah, to TBD. So far, I'm enjoying the stories in it, but I think the author has really talked about how she had the experience of having wealth as a child through her parents, and then they lost it all in divorce, and then she built her way back up as a wealth professional, financial professional, and then lost it. And like, so all the things that she learned about like having and not having wealth and are how we think about it. Because we know all the things are a mindset thing. So
Yeah, it's everything. It's just, if you can see it, you can create it, you believe it, it comes to fruition. I think that is something that is monumental that's shown up in my life.
mhm.
I'm pretty sure more often in your life too, with your career, with everything you've told us so far. Who is someone that you look up to in this world that you're like, they are a mentor? Maybe you haven't met or they haven't officially mentored you, but you look to them as a mentor for your career development.
I would say my mom. It's not necessarily career development, but she's such an advisor and a friend to me. In all things, she's like the person that is like rooting for me, like, you can do it, you should be doing this, yeah, go for it. And then also like, why are you tripping, get it together, figure it out, like challenging me to grow. And so yeah, I feel like super blessed and grateful that we're doing this life together. And so while it's not necessarily like career direction, it's like as a human being, as a woman, I look to her for so much.
Hang on, that's a great answer. Even in career, like she's pushing you in your career,
Mhm,
pushing you to be better. Um, I want to jump to the future. We're
mhm.
10 years down the road. What are you doing, Shaté? What is driving you? Where's career steward? Are you still stewarding careers for others? And I love just saying that. It's such a fun stewarding careers, because stewardingship is like such a big thing. And I love
Yeah.
that it's in your name. So what are you doing? What who are you in 10 years?
I love that you get the stewardship part of it. First of all, that's super important to me because I was like, when I chose the name, I was like, I want to help people be good stewards of their calling. So I want to be, help them to be good steward of what they were put here to do. So thank you. I'm glad you get it. In 10 years, I'm absolutely still stewarding. I'm still career stewarding. I don't think that's something I'll ever not be able to do. I would say I would like to continue helping more professionals tell their stories and make a living doing what they love. So if that looks like, I don't know, an exponential increase in like the number of folks that I'm helping, I would love to maybe be telling stories on an even larger scale. So meaning like if Beyonce needs a book written, like holler at me. Like if I want to, let me help you tell your story. And then I would love to maybe even have a co-working space for creatives and like creative freelancers, side hustlers, entrepreneurs in my area. There's not any, I think, in this way that I'm imagining it, especially on the south side of town. So I see that coming into play in a few years. And then maybe even like a conference. Like I've been playing with the idea, like, what does it look like to have like a space, a learning space for creatives that is not just about the art, but it's a little bit of business, a little bit of art, a little bit of experience, and like a lot of networking. So yeah, I just see it like coming to life, I think, in different ways, but still around the essence of helping people live their purpose and love their work.
I love it. And I love how you're like because creatives, unfortunately, we're really good at creating stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're running the business that we're not really creative on because it's not fun. It's the drudgery of life, if you will. We're
Yeah.
not creating anything. You're doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's what makes the business run, but at the same time, it can drain you. What
Yeah.
do you do to keep yourself from being drained by doing those repetitive tasks that take to run a business?
Yeah, every job, even if it's your dream job, has like a D column work. There's this activity where you like A, B, C, D, and like your favorite things are A, B, and C, D, and not so much. Every job's got a D column work. And so for me, I just, I get it done, or I have a VA and she helps me get it done. And so I highly recommend team members to help you do the thing so that, as much as possible, we can be operating in our zone of genius. And then like the other things like someone else can help us with.
When did you decide to hire that VA? When was it where you were like, "Oh, I need someone to handle this because if not, I'm not going to be doing it."
I've had a VA for a while, so like literally almost immediately. And I'll tell you it's tricky because you got to have the money for a VA. But one thing that there's not a lot of conversation about is what it's like to go from a leadership role in a corporate space where you have a team, you've got managers who are managing other people and they're delegating the things. And all you got to do is like offer strategy and direction and check in, to then going to like a business where you have to do everything. Wowza, like that is not fun at all. And so where I'm used to being in like high level meetings and now I'm like, oh, I actually have to be in the weeds and do this. I hate it. So I got a VA immediately because I was already early on feeling like, oh crap, I have to like do this very in the weeds thing and I don't like it. So depends on what your tolerance is for, if you independent work in that way, maybe you can hold off. But I needed one almost like immediately.
I love that. Love that you got one immediately because a lot of us wait until it's too late and we get overwhelmed and then it's harder for us to hire because at the same time it's like it's our baby. We don't want to give away tasks. But you realize quite early on. I think it was beneficial that you were in that high level role beforehand.
Mhm.
Say, I'm going to delegate.
Yeah.
Who do you want to work with?
Beyonce. Duh. Like I've said it.
I know you said Beyonce, but we're talking in general. We know you want to speak with Beyonce, and we're going to try and make that happen. I'm going to send this to her people and say, hey, Beyonce, you need to work with Shaté because she's going to help you out the best when you want a career transition, maybe even Daisy, because he's had a few transitions. Maybe he needs some help transitioning again. Who knows?
Yeah.
But overall, who is like your ideal client or person that you want to work with? I don't like saying client because I feel to them they're more like family to you and they're like part of your circle. So who do you want to work with? Who do you want to help bring to the next level?
Yeah, I love working with creative types. And I say creative types because some folks feel weird about calling themselves a creative if they're not like making art or performing. Or even if they used to do it as a child and they loved it and then decided to take, the serious job because it paid the bills, but they've always wanted to kind of scratch a more creative itch. So all of those types of folks. And it's super helpful, I guess, if there's some sort of transition in the mix. And so that could look like either I was doing this type of work in a 9 to 5, but now I want to do this other one, or I've been out of the game for so long because I was caring for a child and now I need to get back into it. So like, what the heck do I do? Or it's like I'm in this corporate space and I either want to venture out back on my own or I want to at least start a side hustle on my own. And I stress the transition part because one of my favorite things to do, and that's like the essence of my support, is help them align on the match. Like, what's the thing that you're going towards? Like, where are we headed? And then to tell the story. Like, the story part is so important. I could not have transitioned from a professional dancer to a career coach in ed tech if I had focused on I've taught jazz and tap and ballet to all of these people for 15 years. I had to tell the story of how I was supporting my students, right, through their career outcomes or all of those things. So I think a lot of people just do their resume, put what they've done on it, and submit it or, even if they're trying to build a business and get clients and they just like, this is what I've done, this is what I can help you do. But there has to be a story behind it. It's got to be relevant. It's got to make sense. It's got to be compelling. And so I like to help them tell those stories.
I think I can feel the storyteller in you, especially from the fact that you wrote a book. But I feel like even in your dancing, you were telling a story. So storytelling is something huge to you. I want to talk about. Are you planning another book? Another book.
That's a good question. I've thought extensively about that because I feel like what do I have to say? Like, what is it that I would want to say at this moment? I don't have that thing just yet. When I wrote the Freelance Dancers Roadmap, I was like, oh, people got to know. I had all these blog posts, right? And they were like one-offy subjects, but I was like, if I could make the collection of everything that I've shared into one arc of a story, let me do it. And I don't have that arc yet. So I'm still open to it. So
I think you do have an arc. I think you have the arc because you're a career steward, right? You're stewarding people's career. You stewarded your own, so you have that story from, freelance dancer to corporate ed to now where you're doing now. So you have the outline of the scope of your story. Now you just need to fill in those gaps and tell the story parts of that. I think that would be a very interesting book to read because it's a very different path that most people take. Because you went from a super creative world, which is dance, which, like, just look at the choreographers of dancers today. I not talking about the Olympic breakdancing, but we're gonna. But like, you have all these amazing dancers and the crazy not crazy, but impressive dancing they do that. Fully creative. Then you went into something completely not technically creative. With career advancement. So I think you do have a story there. I think you just need to brush up, and I think you'll find it there. And I'm very excited to read that story or that novel. But we're coming to the end of the episode, which I hate because I'm having so much fun with you and learning about how you're stewarding the world. But I want to go back to the episode's going to be just called Stewardship with Shaté. But I want to go back to your 10-year-old self before you were stewarding anybody. You're looking for stewardship at that age. What kind of advice, or what's one piece of advice you would love to pass back to your 10-year-old self?
Two things that are coming to mind. One is keep following your joy. So and in this, keep following your joy. Like, don't feel the pressure to conform or to fit into any box. Just follow your joy. And then the other thing that is coming up, and I wonder if my 10-year-old self would understand it, but I'm going to say it anyway, like, trust yourself. Like, don't ever stop trusting yourself. Learn what it means to trust your voice, who you are, your perspective, how you're different. You don't always have to fit in. That's okay. Like, just trust. You'll be okay.
I love that. I think learning to trust yourself at a young age is so important. It's going to pay dividends in the long run because you know who you are at your core. I'm going to digest this. I'm going to jump off stage while I digest this because that was an impressive piece of advice. Please let my audience know how they can connect with you and how they can get your help in stewarding their career to the next level. If that's not one of the keywords in this episode, I'm going to be very disappointed. I think I dropped it at least a dozen times, just some questions. But please, Shaté, I want to know where they can connect with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Phil. Well, anyone can find me online at shatéhayes.com. From that hub, you will find everything that I am a part of, including Career Steward. And on social media, I am at I am Shaté, and there's also links there to Career Steward. So if you start there, you'll be all good. And in terms of how you can work with me, if you're transitioning, you need support finding your match and telling your story, then I'd love to support you. You can grab some resources to get started on that reflection that I said is so important. That's the first step. You can go to lightmycareermatch.com to get a career match guide and a couple of other resources I'll send your way.
Okay, I have to thank you so much for an amazing episode. I'm looking forward to reading the transcript and catching all the golden nuggets that I missed while thinking of questions to ask you. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Phil, for having me. It was such a lovely conversation. Great energy. I love what you're doing. Keep it up for sure. And I look forward to continuing to support your work.
Thank you so much. To my audience, make sure you check out the show notes down below. Have all the links to connect with Shaté. I said that right? I'm not messing up.
Shaté.
Shaté. I'm worried. Like, Shaté, you can connect with Shaté down in the show notes down below. Make sure you pick up those free resources so that you can always remember to invest in yourself.